highly decorated, clandestine shadow government employees with absolutely enormous, impeccable credentials, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and Julie Swetnick broke a lot of secret covers and exposed a great deal of CIA, Department of Defense, NASA, and Stanford University family jewels to go after Judge Brett Kavanaugh. America's most secret program turns out to be something other than Operation Paperclip, the atomic bomb, CIA MK Ultra Monarch, or Alternative 3. Right this minute, as I speak, it's the demonic astral powers of the devs and harps that angels don't play that is deeply embedded in the revenge of the Space Kids story. Donald J. Trump, darkness and bloodshed. Dick Cheney, Darth Vader, Satan, that's power. It only helps us when they get it wrong, when they're blind to who we are and what we are doing. In November 2016, President-elect Donald J. Trump's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, for the new administration, told The Hollywood Reporter that darkness is good. These words will haunt each and every U.S. citizen of conscience for decades to come, as they open the floodgates of hell. Never before in the history of this nation has a presidential administration, guardians of the public good and trust, begun its reign by telling its citizens that satanic dark forces and its power are good for the masses. Yet that is exactly what happened in America. What most people are unwilling to accept is that the power of Satan and darkness demands fear and blood, acres of blood. Like King Cyrus 2,500 years ago, Israel see Donald J. Trump as an instrument of God because he has made his intention known of his plan to build the third temple of King Solomon on the Temple Mount, where a Muslim mosque currently stands. King Solomon was a master magician and sorcerer. He knew the forces of spirits or powers of spirits. Solomon had access to a book of mysteries, which empowered him to use demons to accomplish tasks. He had a number of sacred magical texts penned in his name. Within the Dead Sea Scrolls, there is a very fragmented song that mentions Solomon in connection with the devils, demons, and darkness. Of David concerning the words of the spell, in the name of Yahweh of Solomon, and he will invoke the name of Yahweh to set him free from every affliction of the spirits, of the devils, the leops, the owls, and jackals. They are devils, and the prince of empathy is Belial, who rules over the abyss of darkness. Belial, the term Belial, personifies the devil. Belial appears frequently in Jewish texts of the Second Temple period. King Solomon was a demonist. He commanded demons to help him build his temple. The Mandine Genza, which is thought to date to the early 2nd century, claims that Solomon had the power over devils, over demons, and devs, astral powers. Astro is a combining form with the meaning pertaining to the stars or celestial bodies, or to activities as spaceflight taking place outside the Earth's atmosphere. In Kabbalah, devs, demons, are astral entities of an evil or perverted nature. 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 63. And Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto the Lord, 22,000 oxen, and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. Part of Solomon's temple complex was dedicated to the human blood sacrifice of children. A temple for Moloch is dedicated to the sacrifice of children. 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 7. Then did Solomon build a high place for Shemos, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. The God of King Solomon diligently instructed man that he would not receive forgiveness or blessings if he did not approach the Lord with the blood of his sacrifice. So down through the ages, many thousands of animals and thousands of people were sacrificed as a means of access to Yahweh's holy presence. Later, again by divine decree, animal sacrifices were included in the laws given to Israel through Moses, but with a difference. The blood of the sacrifices was to be brought to the door of the tabernacle and later to the temple in Jerusalem. For generations, sacrificial blood rituals have been used as a prelude to battle. Before battle, the Spartans slaughtered a goat for God Apollo's twin sister, goddess Artemis, the same as Diana, Isis, and Cybele. Usually high priests or archbishops that accompanied the army will cut the throats of animals. Whole herds were often driven along for this purpose. When you bathe yourself in the red robe, a veil, or touch it during the red mass, it also represents that magic blood coating or the sprinkle of the Tarabarum bull's blood or priesthood gala blood demanded by the magnet mater Cybele. It is also an initiation into her mysteries through the metaphysics, alchemy, and the third rite of acceptance. The scarlet robes and shrouds of the red mass represents in alchemy the self-sacrifice, the cult's mysteries initiation, the symbolic blood ritual genial castration of the Cybelean judges and priests, the gala. Nearly as soon as Donald J. Trump entered the Oval Office, mad bloodshed began to flow. Corporate network news are widely reporting that President-elect Donald J. Trump is furious, bitter, and in a dark mood about the results of the November 6, 2018 midterm elections. He personally made the midterm elections a referendum on his rule. In midterm elections, Democrats took control of the lower houses for the first time since 2010. On November 7th, at the eve of the 2018 midterm elections, that Donald J. Trump wasn't very pleased with, 28-year-old Ivan David Long allegedly slaughtered in a bloodfest at least 12 people inside the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California. He had no known personal reason or beef with anyone or anything to mass murder people. Long's neighbors told ABC News that he was a veteran who may have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder that likely self-terminated himself inside the bar. Since 1952, one of the CIA's scientific intelligence branch stated objective was to maintain an ultra-secret army of Manchurian candidates. U.S. Army General Paul Gaynor, Morse Allen, and the Science Research Service officials, along with the intelligence branch researchers, had a concerted decision to pursue hypnotism and mind control toward their principal objective, that 200 trained CIA operatives trained in the United States would develop and command a unique, dangerous army of hypnotically controlled agents who would carry out any instructions that they were given without reservations. In other words, the zombie army commit bloodshed without regard to any reasons, justifications, or personal beefs with anyone or anybody or anything. It is generally believed that the sadistic SS Dr. Joseph Mengele may have been the architect of CIA MK Ultra Monarch and its clandestine mind control, assassination, and interrogation programs, Bluebird and Artichoke. Documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act reveal that the U.S. developed its post-war enhanced interrogation techniques at Camp King under the CIA code name Operation Bluebird. The facility's chief medical doctor was Dr. Mengele's untouchable boss, Operation Paperclip's SS Major General, Dr. Walter Paul Emil Schreiber, the former Surgeon General of the Third Reich. During World War II, he was the chief of medical science in Nazi Germany. Schreiber had assigned doctors to experiment on concentration camp prisoners and had made funds available for such experimentation. SS Schreiber was one of Nazi Germany's most secret biochemical warfare experts. When Dr. Schreiber was secretly brought to America to work for the U.S. Air Force in Texas, his position was filled by another paperclip asset, Dr. Kurt Bloom, the former Deputy Surgeon General of the Third Reich and in charge of the Nazi SS program to weaponize bubonic plague. Dr. Bloom is a biological warfare fiend that at the end of World War II threatened to unleash the mother of all chemical weapons to mass slaughter half the people on the planet. In 1947, SS Nicholas Klaus Barbie, Nazi human butcher, was recruited as an agent for the 66th Detachment of the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Corps. Barbie was at Camp King, Operation Bluebird, along with Scarface, Otto Sorensky. Also hair-raising is the ultra-secret CIA Gallant Org, military intelligence, CSS Wonder Weapon, weather modification technology. Currently, there are at least 9 major deadly firestorms raging out of control in California. The Kemp and Ventura County firestorms seem to have come out of nowhere in the middle of the night, virtually frying and incinerating alive man, woman, and child. Malibu, home to many Hollywood gatekeeper movie stars and executives that Donald J. Trump seems to believe that betray him is burning. In a matter of a couple of days, The November firestorms have become the most destructive firestorms in modern California history. 250,000 people have been forced from their homes. Over 9,000 homes and structures have been destroyed. At least 63 people are reportedly dead, and over 600 are missing. Thousands are left homeless and refugees in America. Their homes, schools, business, and communities look like a nuclear war wasteland. In religion, paradise is a place of exceptional happiness and delight. In other shocking, demonic, dualistic, dark symbolism, Paradise, a town in Butte County, California, in the Sierra Nevada foothills, with a population of over 26,000 people, was nearly totally leveled in hours in the Camp Firestorm. Under J. Donald Trump and the Dark Circle in America, Paradise has been turned into a place of fear, destruction, and bloodshed, an inferno of hell. In a tweet from Paris, early Saturday, November 10th, 2018, President-elect Donald J. Trump chillingly said, "Other destruction, bloodshed, and firestorms. There is no reason for these massive, deadly, and costly forest fires in California except that forest management is so poor." It's a red herring. The Camp Firestorm, the country's most deadliest fire, wasn't a forest fire, and it didn't start in a campground. Camp is the name of the street most near the start of the fire, not the fuel of the fire. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. What is known is that it started Thursday near Betsy Ann Cowley's property in the tiny town of Puja. The fire is believed to have incinerated the neighboring town of Paradise. Allegedly, PG&E told Cowley they were having problems with sparks coming through its power lines. So, the campfire that seemed to suddenly have come out of nowhere to catch nearly an entire town by surprise is linked to a direct energy source, not a forest fire. Other than that, officials have no idea how the firestorm started. Many students and quasi-experts on secret weather modification warfare begin in the middle of the story and at the end results, but rarely if ever begin with its origins. However, there is one August 1982 declassified U.S. government report by the U.S. Army Atmospheric Sciences Laboratory, White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico, and the U.S. Army Electronics Research and Development Command in Adelphi, Maryland, that confirms that Nazi SSU's secret weather modification warfare as early as June 1945 in the Battle of the Bulge. They should begin the story with that report. Also documented is a secret U.S. weather modification warfare operation during the 1967-1972 Vietnam aggression called Popeye. The key sponsor of the military operation was Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. The secret operation was covered by Lyndon B. Johnson presidential administration, by Donald Frederick Hornig of the ultra-secret Manhattan Atomic Bomb Project. Kissinger was a puppet running dog for the mysterious and secretive F.G. Fritz Kramer out of Nazi Germany. Kramer was plans officer for the Chief of Staff, U.S. Army. Hitler and Himmler also had a Fritz Kramer, Waffen SS General Major Fritz Kramer. General Kramer was one of Himmler's top and chief military officers in the Battle of the Bulge. He literally walked away to disappear from the Nuremberg tribunal, accused as a defendant for war crimes and crimes against humanity. As an extremely secretive, cunning, and key planning commanding military officer, he used ultra-secret SS miracle weapon modification warfare in the battle. Both Kramers were at the Battle of the Bulge. The late great May Brussel argued that there was only one Kramer at the Battle of the Bulge, Waffen SS Captain Fritz Kramer, Chief of Staff of the 6th Panzer Army, U.S. Army German infantryman Fritz Kramer, and SS General Major Fritz Kramer were one and the same person. Evidence presented in chemtrails exposed. The book suggests that global weather modification project came out of World War II era Manhattan atomic bomb project. Both are and were enormous top secret military intelligence, science, Nazi SS projects. The Manhattan Project scientists have compared the power of the atomic bombs to the power of storms countless times. Nuclear fission is basically the application of astrophysics. Project Popeye was much more than simply cloud seeding. Operation Overcast and Paperclip lists of Nazis and Knights of the Black Sun smuggled into America after the fall of Nazi Germany was partially compiled by Werner Ausenberg, the notorious wartime commander of the Gestapo scientific section. The decision to use Ausenberg was made by U.S. Naval Captain Ransom Kirby Davis, Jr. after consultation with the U.S. Joints of Staff. Captain Davis had been in the most secret circle within the U.S. Department of Defense that smuggled and embedded the Nazi SS into America. They shielded and protected their secrecy, technology, and businesses. Captain Davis was born in Nebraska in 1897. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He had an A.B. degree from UC Berkeley and an M.S. from Harvard. In 1950, or soon before, he popped up in Menlo Park, California, center of the Stanford Research Institute, and as a professor at Stanford University. During World War II, Werner Ausenberg was in charge of the special SS Knights of the Black Sun Research Council, directly subordinate to Rights Marshal Hermann Göring. Ausenberg sent his Gestapo agents to investigate work in progress at scientific institutes and report back on each scientist's political reliability. From these reports and the Gestapo files, Ausenberg compiled a list of 15,000 names of scientists in the Third Reich. Those scientists who held fanatical Nazi views and SS membership were among whom Ausenberg considered to be the best qualified to be smuggled into the United States under Operation Paperclip. Osenberg had been captured in 1945 by the U.S. Army General Leslie Groves Alto's team, and interned in a camp in Germany. The Joint Intelligence Objective Agency was the organization directly responsible for Operation Paperclip, an OSS and Army CIC program for recruiting Nazi scientists. Soon after, the Joint Objectives Agency expressed interest in him. Intelligent officers whisked him out of Germany to Versailles, France, where he set up business as usual, sifting through his files to suggest names of those he considered the best scientists in the Third Reich. The SS Knights of the Black Sun were the most elite, powerful, and dangerous cult of old world witches, wizards, and warlocks in all of Europe and the world. Even in their own time, they were called Lucifer's servants. High on Osenberg's Lucifer list was Luftwaffe Colonel Dr. Theodor Benzinger. In Nazi Germany, he was part of the secret aristocratic high inner circle of the Nazi Party, most likely the bloodline of the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, commonly called the Teutonic Order. Benzinger headed Himmler's SS Dachau drug mind control and truth serum experiments that included mescaline and LSD. The experiments were written up by the U.S. Naval Technical Mission, and they embedded Dr. Benzinger deep inside the Department of the U.S. Navy. Naval Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Charles Savage worked directly under Dr. Benzinger in the ultra-secret mind control truth serum Project Chatter that continued the SS Dachau concentrate camp experiments. Dr. Savage worked deep inside the most inner CIA circle of Dr. Gregory Basin, Dr. James A. Hamilton, and Captain Davis at Stanford University. Dr. Benzinger became the head scientific director of the Naval Medical Research Institute in Bethesda from 1947 to 1970. On paper, Lieutenant Colonel Savage was the director of the Naval Research Institute. At Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's Stanford, Captain Davis had covered the underground Third Reich scientists from the U.S. Department of Defense, and Dr. James Alexander Hamilton covered them for the OSS and CIA at Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park. Dr. Ford is a professor at Stanford University. She was CIA and a mentor to a college job title program named CIA Undergraduate. In 1988, she stepped into the place of Professor Dr. Frederick T. Meigs, psychiatrist at Stanford that died suddenly at 52 years old. Professor Meigs was an extreme deep state CIA MK Ultra contractor. In 1966, he was at Stanford and a special fellow in the Department of Psychiatry at the National Institute of Mental Health. Meigs may also have been a staff psychiatrist for the U.S. Army Edgewood Arsenal, using unwitting soldiers as guinea guinea pigs for BZ drug experiments known as a super hallucinogenic. At Edgewood, he was a strong supporter of BZ and became the Army standard incapacitating agent. The Army deployed BZ in grenades, a 750-pound cluster bomb, and at least one other large-scale bomb. In addition, the Army tested a number of other advanced BZ munitions, including mortar, artillery, and missile warheads. The super hallucinogenic was later employed counterinsurgency weapon in Vietnam, and according to CIA documents, there may be contingency plans to use the drug in the event of a major civilian insurrection. One of the reasons that Professor Meigs pushed BZ was because it was ran out of the Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park through Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Wilbur Maxwell Benson of the giant Swiss pharmaceutical Hoffmann-La Roche AG. During World War II, Roche had good contacts with the Nazi Army. Between 1943 and 45, in a deal with Himmler and the SS, at least 61 prisoners of war and 150 foreign laborers were forced as slaves to work in Roche plants in Germany. In September 2018, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford broke down the state-of-the-art brain science for the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee to explain her long-lasting memory of psychological buried trauma of violent sexual abuse, assault, and battery committed by Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Unexpectedly, her testimony triggered sudden flashbacks of buried traumas by thousands of victims of rape, ritual sexual abuses, and MK-Ultra trauma-based mind control. It triggered Julie Swetnick and about a dozen others that the FBI outright refused to talk to. I was sitting in front of the idiot box, waiting to hear her testimony when my intuition warned me, don't listen to her. I immediately switched on mute and watched her testimony in silence through the reflection of a mirror. At the time, I didn't know that she was a Stanford psychiatrist. It took me decades before I realized that I had a buried trauma in my subconsciousness related to Dr. Basin of Stanford, Dr. Charles Savage, and Dr. Benzinger, the U.S. Naval Project Chatter. I was less than 2 years old when my father was drugged at the Alameda Naval Air Base Station with LSD or mescaline and taken away to the secret U.S. Naval Mare Island Annex mental ward at Napa State Hospital. Since World War II, he had been a highly decorated government employee that loved his country. He had been less than 5 feet 2, no more than 140 pounds. He was just an ordinary man working for his country and raising a family. He had no prior history of drugs, alcohol, or mental issues. He returned home when I was at least 3 years old, but they came back for him when he suffered a severe hallucinogenic drug flashback at home, or the Navy deliberately triggered him to establish a false trail of California state civil commitment. All of those documents and court records have been blocked away from me in a special safe in the Alameda County Administrator's office on the 2nd floor of the courthouse. According to the official hospital records that I saw before they were stolen, my father chased an illusionary pair of silver slippers floating in the air like out of a black and white version of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. He went out of our small apartment third-story window fire escape and attempted to fly. Terrified, screaming and crying, my mother, 2 sisters, and I held on to him for all dear life to pull him back to safety. I was still locked around his leg from the window, 3rd to the 1st floor of our apartment building, even as this small man possessed enough strength to violently struggle with about a dozen police officers. When they finally separated me from my father's leg and took him away, I was so traumatized that I fell into a coma. My family thought I had died. When my soul and spirit returned to my flesh from another dimension, my original self-personality was left in space screaming. My new alternative self-personality of my flesh had no memory of the trauma I suffered or my beloved father. Those terrifying memories and trauma in childhood remained buried for decades. As I speak, Project Chatter remains classified, an ultra-top secret on national security grounds. My father's lead psychiatrist at Napa State Hospital was Naval Commander Dr. Renshel Alexander Oliver, head of the Naval Mare Island Hospital. Dr. Oliver graduated from UC Berkeley in 1930 and Stanford 1938. Dr. Oliver was a clinical instructor of medical neurology psychiatry at Stanford University Medical School with CIA MK Ultra Dr. Meigs, Dr. Basin, Dr. Leo Hollister, and Dr. James A. Hamilton. In the background at Stanford lurked fellow Cal alum Naval Captain Ransom. In 1950, Dr. Oliver and the infamous CIA MK Ultra contractor, Dr. Ewan Cameron of Canada, helped co-found the World Psychiatric Association, which provided a legitimate and reputable safe haven to harbor, reform, shield, and mask war and human rights criminal Nazi and SS psychiatrists. In 1945, Allen Dulles sent Dr. Cameron to the Nuremberg Tribunal in Germany to study Hitler and the Nazi Party's fanatic warlock, occultist, Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess. One day, as I must have done over a dozen times, after his 1977 death, I sifted through my father's personal papers again. I picked up his regular medical patient card. It was from the West Oakland Mental Health Center. My heart dropped a beat, and I almost fell to the floor. The Mental Health Center was ran by Dr. Isaac Slaughter. Dr. Slaughter had been Dr. James A. Hamilton's subordinate at the CIA MK Ultra experimental station at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Dr. Slaughter controlled the beast, the electrical shock machine. Just a mention of his name had been cause to call the cavalry. Even spiders would find it hard to weave webs with his name. While the small, humble man was inhumanely tortured and carried a burden of the world on his shoulders, we literally skipped through the daisies of the fields. All my life, my father had been no more to me than a convenient stranger. I had absolutely no memory of him. I'm not sure how many helper personality alters that helped me keep balance, to walk a fragile tightrope and the right path through life. They help to block and shield me from my memories of extreme childhood wounds, pain, and suffering, and my father that plunged me into a coma, into another time, space, and dimension. After I discovered what Dr. Blasey Ford testified about after the fact, My buried trauma flashback had been mild comparatively, but it still hurt. I continued to quietly suffer under the constant mental strain and stress of guilt that I could have and should have done more. There are good reasons that the Brett Kavanaugh, Dr. Blasey Ford, and Julie Swetnick Space Kids stories had to be swept under the rug and out into the twilight zone. Julie Swetnick's father, Martin Swetnick, was an ultra-elite clandestine U.S. military intelligence astrophysicist. He was a CIA agent and contractor linked to the foundation of Lucifer Servant, ultra-secret weather modification warfare technology, and HARP. In 1953, Martin Swetnick was an associate professor in the New York University Physics Department. NYU is a private educational research institution founded in 1830 by Thomas Jefferson's close friend Albert Gallatin of Geneva, Switzerland, Secretary of Treasury under Presidents Jefferson and James Madison. Recall, Gala or Gali was the blood sacrifice priesthood of the goddess Cybele and her consort Saturn. Gallatin was Illuminati that traced his descent from Attilus Collatinus, Roman consular under Anastasius I, Eastern Roman emperor from 491 to 518 AD. In the 1950s, after the ultra-secret Manhattan Project, the NYU Physics Department, primarily composed of former Manhattan nuclear bomb physicists, were all involved in going into the infinite levels of the universe of outer space to harness far more powerful and terrifying astral powers. They were involved in ultra-secret cosmic ray particle research of the intergalactic universe. Dr. Fritz Wright, in particular, was a student of Max Planck and a colleague of Albert Einstein, who was also active in and made important contributions to the early development of quantum mechanics. From 1913 to 1920, Wright worked and taught under Planck in Berlin. Wright published more than 55 scientific papers and books, including the quantum theory. He became a professor in 1921 at the University of Breslau, and then was dismissed as a Jew from his academic position in 1933. Eventually, with the help of Einstein and the Emergency Committee in aid of displaced foreign scholars, Wright immigrated with his family to the U.S. in 1941 and went on to work with the Navy and NASA. The actual laser has its origin in the late 19th century when Max Planck discovered that energy appears in discrete packets called quanta, and deduced a relationship between energy and radiation frequency. Then in 1905, Einstein proposed that light is made up of quantum particles called photons. This basic change in the understanding of the nature of light introduced a new, indeed revolutionary concept that materials could be made to emit photons in a precise fashion by pumping energy into them. In other words, the light of the universe could be weaponized. The word laser was originally an acronym standing for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. But don't get it twisted. We're not talking about Darth Vader and Star Wars lasers. The oh my god particle. The oh my god particle is an ultra high-energy cosmic ray detected on the evening of October the 15th, 1991, over the U.S. Army Dugway Proving Ground in Utah by the University of Utah's Fly-Eye Cosmic Ray Detector. Its observation was a shock to astrophysicists who estimated its energy to be approximately 20 million times more energetic than the highest energy measured in electromagnetic radiation emitted by an extragalactical object. The OMG particle beam is capable of destroying not only Earth, but the entire universe. Under the veil of ultra secrecy, since at least the early 1950s, Dr. Martin Swetnick, Dr. Fritz Reich, and the NYU Physics Department were developing demon astral powers, secret quantum particle cosmic ray beam weapon research and development for military Illuminati application. President-elect Donald J. Trump wasn't far off in his diabolical evil conceit and mockery of the masses, suggesting that all we have to do to prevent particle beam engineered firestorms is rake up the grass and leaves. Pumping the ground, grass, and leaves, that is matter, with high-density cosmic ray particles will turn them into microwave incinerators, torching man, woman, child, and the environment like something on the surface of the sun.